I'm joined today with Kraut. We haven't talked in a long time. It's been 7 years. How you doing?
Yeah, I don't even remember you, to be honest.
No, that's
I
okay.
don't even remember you. I don't even remember. I'm so sorry for that. That's such an awful fucking thing to say. But I genuinely don't remember who you are. When you DM'd me and I saw that, oh shit, we have DMs back in 2017, I was like, what the? Where's that from?
Yeah. I
Ah,
think the last time we talked was we were both anti-alt-right YouTubers back then, so we were both working together, I guess, to try and
that
make
was a new
videos.
thing.
Yeah.
That was a new thing then. You were part of that little group with me.
Yeah, well, I wasn't like an active like inner circle person or anything, but yeah, I was there.
That thing crashed and burned.
Well, we can talk about that too if you want.
Yeah,
So,
we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. We'll just go ahead.
well, how have you been doing?
I've been doing good. Last year was pretty shit for me, but it's more offline reasons, personal stuff that I don't want to get into. But yeah, been doing good.
That's good. That's good. I just as I told you before, I'm a little bit sunburned, if people can tell,
Mm.
and I went camping and kayaking, which was really fun. So for my friend's bachelor party,
Oh, yeah. I could see that spot on your nose. It does
S-
look very funny.
it does look pretty silly. Hey, you should have seen me a couple days ago. Oh my God, it was a disaster. Um, so you were involved with Gamergate, albeit not super involved. And I reached out to you a while ago to see if you wanted to talk. I got your email. It was in my spam folder, so I didn't see it forever. And then I
Yours was
eventually
in mine
replied to you.
too. Yours was in mine too, funny enough.
We're both spammers,
Ugh,
so it makes sense.
yeah. My email is a hellscape because I made an anti-Trump video 4 years ago now, I think. Almost 5 years ago. And what happened as a result is that Trump has basically signed me up for like Trump newsletters. And they're like a fucking hydra. You block one of them and two more start sending you emails. My inbox is like 50, 60 emails a day for various different Trump grifts. It's fucking absurd.
That does sound crazy. I would hate that.
Yeah, I can barely use my email anymore as a result.
Well, so Kraut, do you want to talk about what you got involved with game? Well, do you want to start with like when did you first get online, talking about politics, talking about gaming, talking about stuff on the internet?
I started after. I wasn't really in gaming per se. I made only one gaming related video. I think I took that down ages ago. But when Gamergate came around, right, I was very active in the atheist community. But more as a viewer, a commenter, a tweeter, sharing videos when Twitter was still very small and stuff like that. And I don't know, were you involved in that community back in that day?
The atheist community? Not really. I mean, I was an atheist, and I'm still like an agnostic atheist, I guess, but I wasn't like actively participating. I mean, I watched like Chris Hitchens' videos, but his speeches and
Yeah,
debates.
there was this thing that must have started at around 2010, I think. I don't know, maybe I have the timeline screwed up, where like Atheism Plus turned up, and there were these. It was basically initially a community of YouTubers who talked about why they don't believe that there's a God and stuff like that. And then people started coming in and saying, "Oh no, being an atheist should also be about being a feminist, being super progressive in your politics, etc., etc." And that caused a shift in the community where it sort of split up. I used to be a really big Thunderfoot fan back in the day, and he was the one who sort of he was one of the leading figures in that split of that community. And I came in touch with Gamergate through Thunderfoot. Thunderfoot, I think, tweeting about it and going on some streams about it back in the day. Gosh, that's more than 10 years ago.
Atheism Plus. A couple people I've interviewed have mentioned this as well. They view this as sort of a similar moment where some people tried to like close the Overton window against those who didn't have like the proper politics. What's your take on the Atheism Plus situation?
I don't think that matters anymore, to be honest. Like in retrospect, it seems really silly, really stupid what these people were arguing over. At least that's from my perspective. That is generally speaking, the opinion that I have of most of this. To be honest, it's sort of, man, I should have stepped away from all of this years ago and do something else. Um, I think the world, like, it's funny also that like the people who were like the big feminist figures in Atheism Plus, they were all guys, and one of them turned out to be a sex offender, or at least a sexual harasser or something. Um, man, yeah. I don't know. I don't really know what. Wait, I'm gonna turn off my AC because it kind of
I can hear it a little bit
distracts.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm turning it off. It distracts me a little bit. Yeah. I really felt back in the day that I was part of something that was sort of important, I guess. And I guess that is the thing that holds most of these communities together online, is that they genuinely feel like they're part of something. But there is a genuine disconnect between the politics of the internet and the politics in real life. It's certainly something that I have come to believe.
I think we're going to probably explore that a lot later on. So you saw Gamergate. You discovered this through Thunderfoot. Did you see his videos or?
Oh yeah, I was a big Thunderfoot fan back in the day. And I came into Gamergate through him, and it's through him that I discovered Sargon of Akkad. Sargon of Akkad was the main person through who I was watching what was unfolding in Gamergate. I started watching him a lot, retweeting his stuff, etc., etc. And then 2015, I decided to make videos myself
Did you make any?
eventually, but that was long after Gamergate was
So you didn't make any Gamergate specific videos. You just tweeted about it.
you're breaking it.
Oh, so you didn't make any Gamergate
I
specific
just tweeted
videos?
about it back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah, I just tweeted about it in on the hashtag on an account that has long since been deleted.
What kind of
Um,
what kind of
I
tweets were you
felt like,
making?
well, in support of Gamergate back in the day. Yeah, like in genuine, I in general, like I felt back then that there was this sort of push where sort of I consider myself a liberal, and I was a little more left leaning back then than I was today, and I guess me and a lot of people back then had this sense, at least the people who took part in Gamergate and all that, had the sense that there was this sort of far left extremism, I guess. At least for those of us who came out of the atheism community, right? We had the sense that there was a far left extremist push that was alienating a lot of people, and that kind of came to us as a means to do a pushback, in a way.
So for you, was Gamergate more about the culture war than about ethics?
Yeah, definitely. 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 I don't even. Like, I have to be very frank with you. I scarcely remember what the original scandal was all about. I really only jumped onto it because of the cultural aspect. Because I thought there was a necessity. Because I didn't like the people who were sort of, going into people's spaces and going like tone policing people, etc., etc. Saying, "Oh, you can't make these jokes; these are offensive." Da 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 da. That was happened mainly in the atheist community. So I jumped on that back then. But honestly, in retrospect, I feel really silly for participating in any of this.
So what's
Because, yeah,
good?
sorry. No, I have a strong disdain of cultural politics in general now at this point. I feel really dumb for participating in any of this. I should have just, walked away.
Well, I do want to ask you about the culture war, and I also have like a general disdain, I think, for it as well. Though, well, I think we both probably have like more nuanced thoughts than just that we can explore if you want. But
Sure.
what sort of things were you seeing at the time that made you think like, okay, look, there's something really bad happening here. People got to stand up. They got to speak up. They got to say something.
There was an attempt to cancel Thunderfoot back in 2010 or 2011, which really rattled a lot of people in his community in particular. Because it was such a stupid fucking thing. I don't even remember who it was. It was one of the small progressive YouTubers who raged at him that he should hand over his account to an African American with a science degree because that is the progressive way of doing things or something like that. And there were people who were just expressing like the most insane sort of beliefs about, DEI and stuff like that. Yeah, that was back then. It's weird how things have changed since then. Jesus Christ, man. Now that I'm talking to you, it's really weird because I don't really think about these times that often. Oh man.
So did you? I know Thunderfoot made a lot of videos criticizing Anita Sarkeesian's work. Did you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on her work or the critiques she was
Well,
doing?
of course I didn't like her. Like almost everyone back then didn't like her. I didn't like most people who were on board with this. I think we genuinely thought that she was sort of something nasty, right? I don't know how you felt about it, that she was sort of intruding into a sphere that wasn't hers and trying to cut it up.
That wasn't my perception necessarily. I mean, obviously, there's the clip of her, saying that, "Oh, I'm not a gamer," and like she did, as we now know, use footage from other people's gameplay footage for her channel and try to pass it off as hers. So I'm not even
Have
sure
you
she
have you
played most of these
noticed
games that she criticized. But
have you noticed how a lot of the people who whined at her for that, who made videos calling her out for that, a lot of the people now do the exact same thing.
what
They're,
plagiarism?
they're all, no, they're all media critics now. Everyone is now a fucking media critic, but it's all cultural stuff. It's not really anything of value in any real politics.
Well, let's talk about
Yeah.
the culture war. So I was also involved with the culture war aspect. I got involved with Gamergate in 2015 for creative freedom reasons. I was concerned about basically the
Hmm.
censorship of games, what I was perceived as the closing of the Overton window for artists, basically, and certain pressure campaigns. Like, if you, I don't know if you remember Change the Cover at all in comics.
I don't actually remember that.
Okay.
Jeez.
All right. Well, basically, it was a campaign by some people to change the Batgirl number 41, I believe it was, the variant cover, because it portrayed the Joker holding the Batgirl hostage with a gun to her head. And people thought that this was alluding to the Killing Joke, which I think it was alluding to the Killing Joke. Um, for like they're doing like a Joker anniversary special or whatever. So a bunch of different DC comics had Joker variant themed covers,
Yeah.
and some people took offense to this because they thought that the Joker had it's implied in the Killing Joke comic that the Joker had sexually assaulted Batgirl, and so they thought that by making this Batgirl variant cover related to this very terrible moment in Batgirl's life was wrong or promoted sexual assault.
Mhm.
It was kind
The
of silly.
main thing that I remember was sort of the case that was made against Zoe Quinn.
Oh,
Um, yeah, that is the one thing that I remember mostly because I remember seeing all that as it was being presented to me and thinking, "Oh wow, this is just what happened to our atheist community back in the day." Um, and that is what drove me very deep into it. But and then I kind of fell down this sort of pipeline where I started to see that sort of stuff, that sort of what I guess what is now called wokeness everywhere, where you deliberately went out of your way to look for it, to call it out, etc. But yeah,
so
man, you're really stumping me.
well, so you okay? So we can talk about Zoe Quinn and the parallels you saw at the time, I guess, real quick. If you have anything you want to.
I don't know anything about the comic, the Batman
Okay,
comic. I don't even read comics. I have to be honest with you.
I
So
don't really anymore. I picked one up the other day, but I've not read it yet.
yeah, it's been a weird 10 years ever since all of this went down. Like, I think initially some of the people who started all of this, I mean, it all morphed eventually into what I guess we could now call the anti-woke movement, or the anti-SJW movement, if you can even call it that, which I was then part of for like 2 years, from 2015 to 2017 as a YouTuber myself. But looking back at it, it's just something that has gone, even though some of the people may have had some legitimate grievances at some point, it's turned into something that I regard as largely negative.
Well, I don't think I disagree. So the culture war, is there any point to any of this
No,
stuff in your view?
no. Like I've gone on to study history and political science, and there's this remarkable thing that happened recently in Germany, which I thought about putting into a video, but I'm worried that it might attract culture warriors. But it's sort of a really an excellent example of how useless cultural politics is. I'll give you that example. I think it's a really good one. So Germany is a federal republic like the United States, right? The difference between the US and Germany is that in Germany, the subdivisions have more power than in the US, meaning the German version of the states have a lot more autonomy. They have a lot more political saying power than the federal government in Berlin. And that means there's a lot of bureaucracy that can be created due to the interplay between the various institutions of the various different 16 states. And because of that, if you make laws that contradict laws in other states, right? If you do something drastically different than it is done in another state, it can create a mountain of paperwork and nonsense. And recently we had this sort of weird culture war politics come to Germany, especially throughout the last 2 years. And left wing states started legislating into law that neo pronouns exist. And right wing states started legislating that there are only two genders for forms that you have to, for example, fill out with the state, etc., and tax forms, etc. And the only thing that this in the end created is just more paperwork and more bureaucracy because you now have the different interlays between the different states, put different genders and different pronouns and different blah blah blah. So that's, in my opinion, a great example of how useless cultural politics is. It just, it creates problems where there are no problems. It gives you the illusion that you're actually helping, I guess, that you're actually doing something useful when in reality you're not doing anything.
Well, I do want to ask you about paperwork too. Actually, that's because your Estonia video was really interesting, but that's much later. So let's to play the other side real quick here. People obviously have different ideas about like what should exist in media, what kind of media they
Hmm.
personally want to create and consume. People have different ideas about like what the culture, quote unquote, should be. And like people are always going to be like debating and hashing out these conversations. Like, okay, you know what? Maybe this cultural practice in our society is good, or maybe it's bad, or we could change it in that way, or maybe this is a new habit we should adopt as a society, not
Hmm.
political, not government, but just cultural things. And like I don't know if that's like illegitimate for people to talk about those things. I don't think it is necessarily.
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is illegitimate. I just think that social media added a sort of dimension to it that we might not even fully grasp yet. Where we might not even like it's stunning to me how much people think they're actually genuinely doing something useful politically when they tweet, even though it is the single most useless form of political engagement there is. It's not even political in many ways.
Well, you say when people tweet, but like you're a content creator, you have almost 600,000
Yeah.
subscribers. You presumably make tweets too, and this like plays some role in you promoting your work, and
Mm.
that work presumably changes people's minds
Yes,
about
yes.
things, right?
But I don't tell my audience that they're part of a movement, that they're part of something that will change society. I try to largely teach people the stuff that I've learned in my studies. And there's a big difference in that. There's a very big difference in that. If you look at the old videos that we made back in the day, when well, not necessarily you, you may have not even been part of this, but like the videos that I made back in 2016 were largely like these very they were like I genuinely believed that I was part of something bigger than me then. And I genuinely believe that the people who were watching me and were commenting under my videos believed that they was part of something bigger than just themselves. That we were part of a genuine political movement changing things. I remember having conversations with Sargon back in the day about how we were going to change politics, which is frankly looking back just delusional. We were completely delusional. Yeah.
Well, he did run for office and lost, so there's that.
Yeah.
So
There's that.
I was also I was a Gamergate YouTuber first and foremost. I made probably hundreds of videos about Gamergate, but I would also occasionally talk about politics, and I'd made some culture war videos too. More anti-sjw leaning, but like more like free speech, I guess, oriented. Like what I was focused on was like the culture war in video games, insofar as I talked about it. And there were a lot of like different like articles, like there was one for Vice Waypoint, if you remember them. I'm not even sure they exist anymore. But they argued that Cindy from Final Fantasy, was it 15, should be censored, I think. Basically, they argued because they said that it was she was one loose thread away from indignity, and you'd think that Square would have seen this and changed it, or seen the backlash to it and changed it. So
Mhm.
they were like kind of soft, encouraging censorship. So like I would make videos like criticizing stuff like that usually.
I got to ask you this because this is something that I had a conversation with an old gamergator maybe a year or two ago as well, and he said like the feeling that he got in retrospect is that people like Sargon and Co just jumped onto their grievances and tried to milk money out of it. In
Um,
retrospect,
That's a complicated. There were people who did that. I don't know about Sargon specifically. I did know Sargon at the time. We actually talked quite a bit. Not every couple months we'd or every few weeks we'd set up a stream or talk or something like that, right? About stuff that was happening. But I don't know if he was like a true believer, quote unquote, or not, or if he
Oh, he
was
is.
just
He
a
is.
grifter. I don't, I can't. At the time, I thought he was genuine. But in retrospect,
It's
it
with how
makes
right
total
wing it
sense.
became, right?
Well,
Isn't it? It's
today
weird how
he's gone down a
weird
really
extreme.
weird dark path that
Yeah.
obviously I don't endorse.
It. I can tell you from being in his private DM group for like 2 years that that shift really just gradually happened. It's like looking back, it's like really weird to think about it. But he started out as sort of this Bernie Sanders socked them, and over the course of 2 3 years, he turned into this like ardent right winger. It was really fucking weird to watch.
Yeah, I
I
don't.
took
Is that
time.
audience capture or like what is that like?
I think he changed his political outlook and beliefs, but it's weird how extreme they became. It's like this idea that he has to go out there and fight wokeness sort of consumed him to the point that it shapes his entire political outlook, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, honestly in what 20 like 2016, 2017, 20 up until like relatively up until like a few years ago, up until COVID, I guess. I was also like pretty concerned with like wokeness, quote unquote. And I guess like I still am because I think that there are very like bad things that happen
I don't
that
care
these
at all
people
anymore.
engage in. Yeah, like they like they're like so. For instance, we just saw with like I'm not sure if you follow like the Sweet Baby Inc. controversy, but like a lot of these games journalists did end up lying about the situation about what happened and misrepresented events. And
Mhm.
you do see that like that specific controversy was started because a social justice person, um, which again they're entitled to their viewpoints, but then they engaged in harassment against somebody, and like obviously they shouldn't be doing that. But then at the same time, after that controversy happened, you had a couple of instances where the anti-sjw people now in gaming, they also decided to behave unethically and started lying about somebody I know actually, E Zhang, who I interviewed,
Mhm.
and so yeah, it's just both sides. I don't care like what their specific cultural views are personally. I just care how they like behave and how they act in the world, and I would think that they should behave ethically and not be dishonest, not lie about people, not misrepresent events, and should try to like engage in dialogue and discussion and talk with people who disagree with them. That's what I want to see happen. So like that's where I'm at with the culture war. Like I think the culture war stuff's pretty dumb personally, but there are like bad things that people are doing in the name of the culture war on both
Mhm.
sides, and I think that should be called out.
Yeah, the thing that I have sort of I'm in a very luxurious position compared to you, I guess, to many others, which is that I had to sort of rebuild my social media presence from scratch, and the thing that I've learned doing that is if you just ignore these people, like you can just ignore these people. At least that's what I'm doing. Yeah, I ignore them. I completely ignore them. I pretend they're not real. I pretend they don't exist. And whenever they try to drag me into what it is that they are complaining about, be it the right wing culture warriors or the left wing quote unquote woke warriors, I just ignore both sides of them because I'm not interested. I'm really not interested in getting dragged into this. And yeah, I think that is genuinely the advice that I would give to most people concerning this entire thing. Ignore these people. They're not as relevant as you think they are.
So to push back a little bit, right? So you push back on it either way, I guess. But let's just like choose like the more like
Mhm.
anti-SJW one for now. So someone might say, okay, look, I understand you just say ignore them. Hey, look, these people, they're assholes. Who cares? But they do have some influence on the world, right? You do see in academia, for instance. There's a conference coming up, a GamerGate conference, quote unquote, and I interviewed the organizers of this conference, Paul Jawson and Stephen Mallory, and their whole conference basically is them talking about of talking about how Gamergate's bad, even though they only have one side presented at the conference.
Why are they even talking about it 10 years later? It's so weird that people
So
keep.
they
Yeah.
say they say that they want to. Well, supposedly the thing is that they want to supposedly revisit it and see what they can learn from it, right? But they only invited anti-Gamergate people, and like there's a few people who might be
Mm.
neutral, possibly, but they don't have anyone on the other side at all represented. Now, they did talk with me, I guess, later, to be fair, but the conversation did not like instill me with like a great deal of confidence that their
It
conference is
feels
going to
it
be
feels
great.
like it feels like beating a dead horse to me. It really feels like like beating a dead horse to me. There's this guy. I'm not supposed like something funny about for people who were involved in Gamergate. Like, there's a lot of big YouTubers and social media personalities out there who were involved in Gamergate, but nobody knows because they deleted their tweets several years ago, and nobody remembers that they were involved, and they got a bigger audience, and nobody knows it, and they sort of keep it secret or don't talk about it. And I know a guy who was involved in Gamergate, just like I was on the sidelines, who is now a really big like analyst of disinformation campaigns on social media, mainly Russian disinformation campaigns in Georgia and Ukraine and stuff like that. Built a career of analyzing social media patterns and behaviors. And you know, most people, the only people who I think got to somewhere out of it is the people who moved on. To be honest.
Well, that's probably true. The people who are still stuck on Gamergate 10 years later, uh, I'm not. I shouldn't say that. Some of them are like well put together people, but I think a lot of them, too. They even they would tell you they spent way too much time on it. You know, it consumed
Yeah.
such a massive portion of their life, if nothing else.
It turned into something really awful,
You think so?
especially when 2016. Yeah, I mean, what were people like me doing in 2016?
Well, you were
Like,
debating the alt right, or you were making anti-sjw videos. One of the
that
two.
was in 2017. That was 2017. 2016, the videos I made, I don't even remember half of them, but I do remember that some of my friends back then just basically made videos shitting on little girls uploading videos and how they were feminists. I luckily didn't do many of that because I never really liked the response video format. I always thought of it as sort of kind of gross. But I don't really look back at the content I made back then with sort of with a sense of positivity. I really don't.
Yeah, I do think that the anti-SJW community, like the YouTube community, like insofar as that ever existed, I think that they did. Like, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody. There's a lot of people. Some of them I don't have problems with at all. I think others basically just became culture warriors. Um,
Yeah.
but
Some got rich. Some people are really
some people did,
some
yes.
people some people really sort of baffle me to this day because yeah, you know Blaire White?
Yeah,
Like that entire like I was sort of friends with her back in 2016, very early when I still had a bigger channel than her. Um, I think her old videos are all gone, but if you happen to find some of her really old videos, she's far more articulate and far better researched than she is now. That bimbo personality that she puts on in her videos, that's an act. She's actually a really, really smart woman beneath all of that. And I don't understand some of these people. I really don't. Some of these people just really deliberately dumb down the content to just woke bad. Basically, that's all they do. Yeah,
do you have any thoughts on Not Your Shield? Do you remember this at all?
I do remember Not Your Shield. Yeah, yeah, I do. That was fun. That felt really good. I'm not gonna lie. It felt really good being part of that.
Oh, you were part
Tweeting.
of it?
No, I mean tweeting about that back in the day, like seeing it happen as an observer back then when you tweeted about it, like that feeling that you get that you were part of something, even though it was all just social media stuff, is yeah. That's one thing that really like it harkens back to what we briefly touched on previously, the fact that people can get this sense that they're part of a movement for just shit posted on social media. That is something that kind of worries me to a degree. That you can instill that feeling in someone.
So, well,
Yeah.
you said that it went to a dark place. Like, so what do you think happened exactly?
In retrospect, I really think it was Sargon, mostly. He was the one who just became, as time passed by, I'd have to watch his old videos. But he I remember like when I got kicked out of the anti-SJW sphere in 2017, I did this thing with friends of mine which we called the Skeptic autopsies, where we just looked at all the videos that we have made through the last 2 3 years and just tried to sort of come to a conclusion over what the fuck went wrong, what did we do wrong, what went wrong here. And it's very obvious, it was very obvious to us back then that what happened is that Sargon just became more and more and more and more right wing with every passing month, more and more and more right wing, and people just moved along with him, and he managed to successfully push things more and more right wing. While interestingly, he kept calling himself a liberal. These days, I don't really care much about him anymore because a few years ago he finally came out of the closet and just said, "I'm a conservative," which he is. You know, he's a very right wing conservative. But yeah, in retrospect, what went wrong is Gamergate initially, I think, was an alliance that was cross political, right? Like
Sure,
most
yeah.
people who participated in it was cross political. And then a right wing segment of it dominated it and just pushed it more and more to the right wing.
I know that they definitely tried. So you think that they were successful then?
Definitely some of them were. Certainly. I don't see, like, you're one of the first old Gamergaters that I meet who isn't right wing. Like most old Gamergaters who are not right wing, they don't go around and tell people that they were part of Gamergate.
But do you think that's because you were more in like the YouTube community, and like a lot of the people you know were those anti-sjw YouTubers?
Yeah, definitely. In YouTube, like it's the right wing sphere, it's the right wing political sphere, which managed to claim almost complete ownership of the Gamergate hashtag and the Gamergate movement, at least on YouTube.
So the reason I ask is because I've asked everybody about the politics of Gamergate. I'm going to ask you about it too, I guess. I guess we could have already talked about it, but and almost nobody thinks it was right wing except for Michael Koretsky.
No, it wasn't.
And
Like I felt I
yeah,
was very left wing. Like
and I know we
yeah, most
have
people don't.
data from Chris Ferguson and Brad Glasgow survey. Are you familiar with that one? The one in December 2015, January
I
2016.
saw that. I saw that there were polls being taken, and they showed that people were largely left wing who
Yeah,
supported Gamergate.
and
Yeah.
yeah, that was actually a peer reviewed paper too. That got published years later in 2019. Um, and then I ask people too. I have an optional survey, and I know how people are going to vote in the upcoming election. And out of 27 respondents, I think it was, or something close to that, because it's only the people I've interviewed, but I've tried to get a diverse cross sample of various different communities, and only 30% of them are going for Trump, and 30% are going for Biden,
Yeah.
and about 40% are undecided,
Yeah.
or third party, or not voting. Of the Americans, because obviously there's a lot of non-American Gamergate people too. Almost half of them are non-Americans. So I just don't see. I know that like Milo tried. I guess Sargon. Well, Sargon didn't really try because he was of the view that Gamergate was over after AirPlay. He tried
Yeah, and I
pushing that
stuck with
idea.
him. I
Yeah.
stuck with him after that. Yeah. So that segment, like he basically, he carved out an audience from it and sort of formed this little kingdom out of it, his little fiefdom. Yeah.
But I don't see it as like a successful attempt. Like I know Milo
It
definitely
it
tried to take it
might
like a
be
political direction.
it might be in retrospect a great place to study how movements can be hijacked. Like that might be something worth looking into at some point in the future. Because yeah, you're absolutely right about this. Because I remember when I was still tweeting Gamergate and was in the groups. Sorry, burp there. I hope that didn't disrupt things too much. Yeah, I considered myself very left wing back then. Most people did. Most people I talked to. But still, it brought forth something completely different. At least on YouTube. Don't know about the other places that much.
I'm just so you push back on me on this by all means, but I just don't I don't see it as like if so like for instance one of the Glasgow questions and Ferguson questions was if people go to Breitbart for their news, and it was only 6% of the Gamergate people in their survey. It was almost 1,000 people, and they verified every single one of them had made past comments about Gamergate, and only 6% of them went to Breitbart. So it's just like it just seems like yeah, if I know they tried to hijack it like Breitbart did, Milo, and like these other right wing actors, but it doesn't seem like they were successful if they only got 6% of people to trust them.
No, I don't think so because, well, I sorry, why did I say no? I kind of agree with you with this because I think that a lot of people just when these attempts to hook their politics into it and to hook people out and make them part of something else started coming in, that a lot of people just dumped and left. Like that's basically the story of it. The more people tried to stuff their own stuff into it, their own politics into it, to hijack it, to make it their own thing, the more people just left, basically.
Yeah, I do think a lot of people definitely left over time, especially after Airplay. And that was sort of like a coordinated effort too. Like people like Game Diviner and Sargon actually tried to get people to end Gamergate after Airplay, basically. Sargon even made that
Yeah.
video, "The Victory of Gamergate," and then Paulo tried. Did he talk to you at all, Game Diviner, with his plan to get everybody on board?
I don't think he did. No, I
Okay.
mean, usually when people, I think we can let your audience, when we started talking again, like I asked you, why would you want to talk to me about this? I wasn't over, I wasn't really a creator back at Gamergate. I wasn't one at all. Like I jumped on later when the anti-sjw thing became a really big thing. Yeah.
So some people claimed that Gamergate supporters engaged in or supported harassment as a general matter. What did you think of this claim, and do you think that's accurate?
I certainly did not during Gamergate. But I do believe there must have been a handful of really bad actors. And I don't mean that like oh there was a group of like 100 people who did some awful thing. I'm pretty sure I think from Gamergate that there was a guy who did all the awful doxing basically to cause as much chaos as possible. I don't remember his name, but
Who?
I do remember
Well,
him
I
being.
might know them actually. I know the Bill Wagner crew tried to dox a bunch of
Yeah,
people, and like the GNAA.
yeah, Bill Wagner crew and these people. Yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah,
actually
there were
doxed me.
definitely those. Yeah, they definitely existed back then. They definitely did that, and
Though
it
they
was
were.
funny because
Sorry, go ahead.
what they did was blamed on us. I remember that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they weren't like pro GG though. They were sort of like their own thing.
They were there to cause chaos. They were basically there to just make things worse for everyone. Yeah. I think they got a kick out of the fact that they doxed and harassed people, and then the rest of us got all blamed for it.
Yeah, well,
For
even
that.
so, I've interviewed some of the trolls actually, two of them. Pterodax, he's one of the third-party trolls actually. I've interviewed. He basically says that it wasn't his intention necessarily to get Gamergate blamed for when he harassed people, but he says that he delighted in seeing it happen. But it wasn't
Yes.
like he wasn't like going in like I can't wait to blame the Gamergate people. It was just like it happened and hey, I'm cool with it.
Yeah. People who just want to see a fire burn, basically.
Well, he calls himself the Joker. Um, he's got a
What a
Joker
laugh.
poster behind him in the interview I did with him.
Uh,
He's still a troll to this
uh,
day. Actually, he's not really reformed.
I hate that word, by the way.
Yeah.
Reformed, when people use that.
Why do you hate it?
Uh, in the social media context, because it's so weird. Like, reformed from what?
Well,
I
I,
have to
I
ask you.
guess I guess like because like a normal person wouldn't be like
Yeah.
sticking their dick inside of a turkey and posting pictures of it on social media or like sending people death threats.
Oh, you mean in that sense? Yeah, no, I encounter that word a lot. It's a weird one. Yeah, but we might get into that one later. Yeah. No, that definitely wasn't like we were. I was not part of a harassment campaign.
No, I wasn't
I
either.
don't think. Yeah, I wasn't going out there getting people's phone numbers, calling people, doxing people, trying to get people swatted, shit like that. Most of my tweets were like, yeah, yeah, they're like the not my shield thing that you remember. There was no harassment in any of it. It was actually kind of wholesome almost.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree at all. By the way, Not Your Shield changed at least one person's mind. A man in maroon who I've interviewed, he says that he was going in very skeptical of Gamergate, and then he saw Not Your Shield, and he changed his view. He said if there's this
It's what.
many, he said if there's this many minorities and women speaking out and saying that, hey, look, the media is misrepresenting this, that there must be something going on here, and he looked into it further and ended up joining Gamergate, quote unquote.
It's later, in particular, like talking from the YouTuber perspective, it's what other people then later used to do with it. Like we definitely harass people on the YouTube corner of things, especially going into like late 2015, 2016. Initially, people were not really keen on that, but then Yeah, I have to be very honest about that. We did do that.
So when you say harass people, like what did you do?
I do remember making a video where I called a trans woman creator a man. And I have to be very frank about that. It is not because I believed that she was a man, but I did that out of spite, out of malice, very clearly. And I think that a lot of the content that people made, especially in the 2016 era, was sort of driven by that malice, by that kick out of bullying someone, basically. It definitely became a corner of online bullies in 2016.
Yeah,
At least the YouTubers that were
I
part
think
of it.
YouTube. I think YouTube kind of. I don't. I don't know if I'd call it bullying because like I'm a pretty pro free speech.
Mhm.
But I think that YouTube politics for a long time was really toxic, and maybe it still is. I mean, it probably still is.
I carved out my own corner. I don't have any of these problems anymore with people. But it's, well, I do, but yeah, it's a different story. But yeah, it was unproductive speech, I would guess, put it. You can still call it free speech. You can still defend that it should exist, but it was definitely unproductive. It didn't serve any purpose.
So,
People who did. Sorry.
oh no, is there anything else you want to say about GamerGate before we move on to other questions?
I think I'm going to ask two friends of mine who are creators on social media who were part of Gamergate just like me, not became prominent through it, not gained a lot out of it, but who were part of it and people forgot that they were part of it, who were not creators when they were part of it. I'm going to ask them if you may want to talk to them as well, if they might
Yeah,
be interested.
I'm not interested in adding new people really, but if I'm going to add like a big creator, I think it would be worth it because it would help with the project, get attention on it, which I think would be useful.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I'm more someone who like grew afterwards. Like I was on the sidelines and I was tweeting about it. I was tweeting the hashtag basically. That was my thing. I wasn't a creator in it. I was one of the how many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people tweeting it. That was it. Yeah.
but yeah, if you want to
So
get in touch with them for me, that'd be great. I'd be willing to talk.
yeah, I'd ask them first because people don't know that they were involved in Gamergate, and I don't know if they want to know. They want other people to know.
So what do you think of that? Like, what do you think of like the negative media coverage that GamerGate got?
I'm not surprised by it. Um, I mean, we still get that stuff kind of happening today, right? In some major media outlets, where people just misrepresent things as they happen. Um, that's certainly something that I learned out of Gamergate is that certain perspectives in which the media present things isn't necessarily true, or is definitely shaped by more personal biases. Like I don't know what your stance on the war in Ukraine is, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm
Oh, I'm
very
pro-Russia.
pro-Ukrainian.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a Vatnik actually. I'm actually on leave right now from. I'm
Yeah, no, no. I've had like I'm very active in like the pro-Ukrainian communities and stuff, and there's a big problem that we have right there with the New York Times, who just keeps writing shit piece after shit piece after shit piece about the poor Russians, the poor this, the poor that. One thing that they did recently in the New York Times, and you won't fucking believe this, it's incredible. So a Russian bomber mistakenly bombed a Russian town in Russia, Belgorod, because they're so shitty at this point. Like their coordination and everyone knows by now that the Russian armed forces are a joke, that they're corrupt, that things don't really work. And basically, a Russian bomber, either the bomb malfunctioned and dropped from the plane, or he mistook the targets. He bombed the Russian town, destroyed a Russian housing block, killed several dozen people. And I kid you not, the fucking New York Times put the picture of the bombed out Russian housing block on their fucking front page, claiming that Ukraine bombed that town. It wasn't Ukraine. It was a Russian bomber that dropped that bomb. Observable fact that it was the Russians. That it was sort of a mis. I notice things like these more and more. Like that's definitely a personal legacy of Gamergate to me. I'm very suspicious of what I read in newspapers, and one thing that also happened is I read more local papers. Like I don't read the big national front page papers anymore, like the New York Times and that kind of stuff. I buy my local town paper now. I support my local journalists. I find that to be very important. I would encourage anyone to sort of to support their local journalists by buying their regional papers rather than the big national ones.
Well, we can definitely talk about Ukraine too. I wanted to ask you about that. I'm also very pro-Ukraine, so
That's,
um,
by the way, something a conversation that I had with a journalist that was still in the anti-SJW era. I don't know if you remember that. That was a live stream that I did with someone, an old journo who worked for the Washington Post for 40 years, and we asked him sort of why do you think is the quality of journalism on the decline? And he answered, well, the reason is that regional papers are going bankrupt. Back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, your journalism career started at a regional small town paper. And that sort of was like the testing ground where you had to do a good job, prove yourself, show that you were good at doing this. And if you proved that you were good at this, then you got to move on to a bigger national paper. And now that regional papers are all dying off, that sort of testing bed where you learn how to do actual journalistic work is gone, and you go straight into something else, something for which you might be underqualified for.
so do you think that's what happened?
For the journalists, yeah, definitely. And I think that is a development that happened across the Western world. The death of the small paper is making journalism worse.
What is to be done?
Support your local paper.
Well,
Support your local paper.
I don't like disagree, but that's not a structural change that one can implement, right? And you and I probably aren't going to convince like millions of people to start like supporting their local newspapers. So like, what do we structurally do to try and solve this problem?
Maybe nobody has tried yet. Maybe we do have success with it. I actually thought about making I remember that conversation, and I thought about making a video about this, telling people support your local paper, support your local paper. Um, Other than that, I don't know what to do. Maybe journalism moves to the internet, and instead of like big national papers, etc., we have like small independent journalists working. But that might also be a bit of a problem because there aren't really any ethical standards on the internet for reporting. People can
Well,
just make shit up.
so that's well, yes, of course, unless you're engaging in defamation, right? Um, but the thing is, like, how do you like? It should be based on trust, right? So people like, oh, this YouTuber Kraut or Tachyon Blue or whoever, right? That they do a really good job in how they present things. They seem to do a lot of research. They seem to try and get multiple sides of a story when they talk about it. And so I trust them, right? Like that should be like, is that not a solution too? And also not just individuals, but like media sites too, or bloggers, or the various different. It's not just YouTube and streams. It's a
Hmm.
whole array of online content. But people
You'd
should be
have to
building
have
their
a single
reputations
standard.
based on trust, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, that does work until it doesn't. It works until it doesn't. There's you can trust someone to be accurate in reporting the news. Like it's also like, oh man, you're opening a can of worms here. Damn, like there's so many things here that you have to think about. Yeah, sure. Yeah, like imagine you have someone who's reporting the news as a YouTuber and blogger for like 10 years and is doing so accurately, and then they suddenly lie about something. And then who is the one, like the problem with trust is, and as crazy as this sounds, there are people who trust Alex Jones, you know, who's probably the least trustworthy person in the entire media sphere. Yeah, a trust-based system probably doesn't work out.
So why is that though? Why do people trust Alex Jones, right? Is it just that we just aren't teaching people in high school how to think about things critically or how to examine evidence, or is it just that there's going to be like a percentage of the population that's always going to be like oriented towards conspiracy thinking, and they'll just like
Oh,
naturally find their way there, or like what the heck's going on with that?
if I'm going to give you my explanation, we're going to sit here for 30 hours, 30 minutes because it's a very long one.
Hey, go ahead.
So,
Hey, you said you have
okay.
all night.
Do you know who Bronislaw Malinowski was?
No, they're not.
Bronislaw Malinowski was a Polish anthropologist. He did something. He was very influential in the field of anthropology. What he did was he destroyed armchair anthropology. Armchair anthropology is how we did anthropology mostly in the 19th century. You would go to a people, a native people somewhere in East Asia, in the Pacific Islands, in Africa, or in Southern America, and you would just sit down on the chair and you would observe these people and you would write your observations down. And Bronislaw Malinowski disagreed with this approach. He was a student. He was also a sociology student who believed in sort of studying like social contracts and how social contracts came to be, and he invented sort of the what we call now participatory anthropology, where you go to the society that you want to study and you live as a participant with them. What he did is he went to Papua New Guinea and he lived with a native tribal people in Papua New Guinea as a participant, an active participant in their society for almost 5 years. And he revolutionized the field of anthropology with that, and he did a lot of studies in that. And one of the most interesting studies he did was on the role that magic plays in social cohesion. I think it's fair to say we both know that magic is not real, but he wanted to understand why do people still have rituals of magic? Why do people still have shamans? Right? I pointed out that the shaman and magic plays in the role that it plays in society is that when people are confronted with things for which they have no explanation, the shaman fills that gap in. The shaman brings in, you know, the certainty to confront the unknown. And he pointed out that when missionaries came to the native peoples that he lived with and tried to discredit the shaman, that people would stand up in defense of the shaman. And if missionaries tried to humiliate the shaman, people would get even aggressive against those missionaries because the magic and the rituals that the shaman provided formed a bonding mechanism for the social contract itself. It was something that became necessary to hold the society itself together. Malinowski lived in the 1920s and 1930s. I was also a big critic of the fascist regimes and the Nazis as they came to rise. And what is sort of something that is underappreciated is that he took his research on magic and used it to analyze the rise of Nazism. There's a funny note there. This is a text of his, a letter that is often forgotten. He was very critical of Charlie Chaplin's famous movie, The Great Dictator, which, you know, it's apparently a great piece of anti-fascist cinema. All the people with degrees in Netflix say that it is. But the critique that he pointed out was, look, the role that fascist ideologues and people like Hitler play in a society, that propagandists in general play, that say absurd things that are obviously untrue, but people still rally around them, is if they can provide for you a ritualistic mechanism that can provide social cohesion, especially in times of uncertainty, that is an incredibly strong thing. And if you ridicule the shaman, all you do is make him stronger to the people who believe in him. And I believe that is something that is going on very much with someone like Alex Jones. He attracts people who live in times of uncertainty, and they fall for the sort of phony certainty that he provides as a shaman. That's my explanation. I don't know if this was 30 minutes now.
Not quite 30, but so what's the takeaway from this that someone like him, because he doesn't operate, in what way is he shamanistic, right? And doing
He doesn't want to tell you the truth or anything like that. He doesn't want to report anything. He wants a group. He wants a group of people he wants a movement. He deliberately wants to create a sort of movement. And he provides rituals, more or less, for people to follow him.
What's the ritual?
Well, listening to his mad ramblings.
Well, like people listen to us right now, like presumably they're not doing so because of our rituals, right?
Yeah, but I'm not telling you that. I'm not telling you that like absurdities. We're not performing things, right? Like if you watch Alex Jones, it's a performance. It's almost theater. It's an absurd kind of theater. We are having a conversation, a very normal conversation at that. Alex Jones has never had a normal conversation anywhere at any point throughout his entire media career.
So it's just the performative nature of it, basically?
Yeah, look at this stuff. It's just this creepy, like, constant, like, screaming of, like, catchphrases like 1776, we'll go again, blah, 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 and the dancing around and all that stupid nonsense.
So, okay, so it's not just Alex Jones, though. Like, I feel like a lot of political commentators, for instance, like look at Hassan Piker, right? He's on the far left. He's
Hmm.
supporting Houthi pirates taking over and
Same
attacking
thing.
civilian merchant ships. Like
Same thing.
it's yeah. So, but like it's is it what's the difference between performance and rhetoric essentially, right? You mentioned talking points. Like what's the difference between them going out there and having like 5 talking points and they're just going to shout those out?
For
Did you
one,
see
honesty.
the? It's
For
what?
one, honesty. Honesty. To be honest with you, sort of having an ideal behind it that you're trying to be honest with people. That might be one of the big differentiators, in my opinion, at least.
Did you see the Destiny versus Sebastian Gorka debate on trigonometry?
No. No.
Okay. Well, you didn't miss a whole lot. Basically, Sebastian Gorka the whole time, and like this is like he's incentivized, I guess, because he's trying to get a job in the Trump White House again. So he's like
Mhm.
his whole thing is just playing to one man. That's his audience basically. And he spends the entire time basically just shouting and talking points, not answering a single question. He just has everything lined up on a script, and that's it. And he doesn't, no matter what Destiny says, no matter what the moderator says, he's just going to roll with what's on the script, and that's basically it. And it was the whole thing was a performance.
Yes. That was. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, to be honest, because the Trump movement is very much very tribalish.
Well, that's well. Do you want to jump into that now, or do you want to talk about your post Gamergate history and post anti-sjw
I leave
history?
that to you. I leave that to you. It's your
Okay.
channel. You're doing
All
the
right.
interview.
Well,
What
I'll
interests
ask
you?
you then. All right. So after Gamergate, or during the later years of Gamergate, I guess, you were an anti-alt-right YouTuber as well, and you ended up making videos trying to attack these people. The Trout one, I think, was a pretty popular
Yeah.
one. And so, what made you want to do that, and what sort of things were you? What did you see in the alt-right that you wanted to fight against, and like what made you think this was an important thing to do?
That was actually an internal division in that community at the time.
Oh, in the
That
anti-SJW community, yeah, I remember. I was on the
yeah. Then
I was on the fight them side.
yeah, there were people who like Sargon and what was the name of that blonde bitch? The Canadian. I really hate it, by the way.
Lauren Southern.
Lauren Savin. Yeah, yeah, I really hate her. Like Lauren Savin was in particular like this is something that it's weird that people forgot that she was like the one. I think a lot of people don't notice behind the scenes in the private chats. She was the one hardest pushing for like the most deranged alt-right people you can imagine, like Jared Taylor and co. to be regular guest on Sargon's podcast and shit like that. She's insane and it's sufferable. Like she was really deep into like the white nationalist shit back then. And yeah, there were people like her, and then there were people like you and me, I guess, who, well, I don't know if I can speak for you on that behalf, but like I just felt really uncomfortable with all these Nazis being coming into like our community, our sphere, how popular they were becoming on YouTube. I was really uncomfortable. I don't know.
Yeah,
How
no,
did you
I
feel
was
then?
basically the same thing. And I saw that they were engaging in like the same exact behavior that the SJWs were, just on the other side. Like, literally, Jack Posobiec, he's one of those far right grifter guys. He got his whole start because of this video I made criticizing him, basically. But I criticized him for the thing that got him his start, which was he actually remember Rogue One, Star Wars Rogue One.
I I haven't watched any of the new Star Wars movies since
Okay,
2015.
it's worth
I'm
checking out.
completely
But
really.
yeah, I would
You
say
see?
it's one of the few good Disney ones.
Okay.
But he basically he made his career off of this fake campaign he made called hashtag Dump Star Wars, and he lied about the movie. He claimed, oh, they're putting anti-Trump scenes in the film. We need to have a conservative boycott of Star Wars. Um, I don't think it was like a successful boycott. Like Rogue One, I think was like one of the more successful. Was I think successful. I think right. And that was well liked generally. But he basically lied about the movie, and so I called him
Yeah,
out on that.
man. And the thing that really bothers me is that I failed. Like the thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to turn sort of anti-SJW YouTube into anti-alt-right YouTube, which might have not been a good goal to have in the end because now in retrospect I think that having yourself defined by what you're against is generally a bad thing possibly. But yeah, I feel really shitty for failing at this project. It's weird because most people who I talk to do not bring this up. It's such a weird thing.
They don't bring up the like the divide there, or was it like what did they not bring up? or your
The
project?
anti-alt-right stuff. Yeah, no. It's like, ever since I've moved on with my channel and to different things, the people who I encounter from the cultural sphere are either people who are far left or far right. The far right ones only bring up that I made anti-alt-right videos and claim that I'm an SJW, a woke person or whatever. The far left ones just and the far right ones, by the way, ignore that I used to make anti-SJW videos. The far left ones ignore that I used to make anti-alt-right videos and claim that I'm a Nazi, that I was a leading figure in the alt-right, etc., because I made anti-SJW videos. It's really weird. It's really weird.
Well, it's
In
because they're
retrospect,
not
yeah.
engaging in good faith. They just yeah. Or they
I know
don't
it.
know, right? They only know like the negative. They saw like 5 clips of you on Twitter or on TikTok and they're like, "Oh, this 50-second clip that somebody made, that's your entire personality."
In retrospect, I really feel like I should have never been part of any of this at all. That I should have been started off on YouTube making the videos that I make today. That's really, that's really something I feel, man, because it was so pointless, useless.
So you say that, right? So like what specifically was pointless or useless? Like I don't think that criticizing the far right in like 2017, 2018, 2016, whatever. I know for you it's like 2017 more. I
Yeah, but
don't think that that's bad.
you're the first person to mention to me that I did that in like literally probably 2 or 3 years. Most
Well, it
people
was a
like,
long time ago too. But I don't think I
yeah.
yes, so I don't think you like succeeded, quote unquote. Like if you look at like the anti-sjw YouTube channels
Oh
today,
no,
like I don't
it,
think that well they aren't like all right wing. Like there is like a diversity, I guess, of viewpoints among them, but like it does lean more right.
yeah. No, it is. Yeah. I mean, the alt-right didn't get away with it either. Like a few years later, they were banned and stuff. And then BreadTube came along and kicked them to the heel, I guess you could say. I just feel like looking back at that, I just wonder if I should have just, walked away and not. It's a weird thing. I haven't really got my thoughts together on this yet because I'll be very frank with you about this. Back in the day when all that happened, nobody wanted to hear my side of the story. And then I'm kind of, so I don't let people in anymore. I don't really talk to people about the things that how I think about the things that happened in the past because nobody cares about either what actually happened or how I feel about these things. So I just don't say anything and move on with stuff. I guess.
Well, we've got
Yeah.
53 viewers, so somebody cares, and that's just on YouTube.
Somehow.
Be sure to like the stream and subscribe. By the way, I do a lot of cool interviews like this.
Uh,
So you,
how
I
do
know.
you feel about? You were in the group. You were in the anti-alt-right group.
Well, I was in the Discord server, right? I was,
Yeah.
I mean, I was
Yeah.
there, but I wasn't like super active or anything. I made my own videos criticizing the alt right. Like I made like five or
I felt
six.
back then it was really necessary.
Yes,
Like I really felt it was really, really fucking necessary to
I
do
agree.
this to kick all
So,
these alt-right people out.
so there you were accused. Fuck, I don't remember who it
Yeah.
was. It was all ancient drama from 10 years ago. But you were accused of engaging in doxing against somebody in the group. I
Oh
remember.
yeah.
But was that true? What happened with all that?
Nah, I didn't dox anyone. I didn't dox anyone. I didn't collect any doxes. What happened is that I found out that a alt-right YouTuber, who has since, funny enough, died, called Coach Red Pill, was a con man and had scammed someone out of money, and I wanted to expose that. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, he's a Russian. Well, he was.
yeah.
He was a Russian propagandist too, right? And then he got blown up. Or no, no, he died of illnesses.
He took pictures of Ukrainian troop positions and sent them to the Russians. Which, yeah,
Yeah. And then he got sick.
sick in prison,
It was yeah.
pneumonia.
Well, so what do you think happened there? Do you think that he did legitimately get
I do
sick?
not know.
Yeah.
I do not know. I
So
imagine that a Ukrainian prison is an awful place.
so I'll say the PR answer, which I think is I guess true. Is what I believe. He is an American citizen. He's a piece of shit asshole. Probably deserved to die. Who cares? But at the same time, am I allowed to say that on YouTube? I think so, right? As long as I can in Minecraft. Okay, so in Minecraft, it's fine if he gets blown up or if he dies of a cold or whatever the fuck. I don't care. I'm not going to shed any tears. But as he is an American citizen, I think that the State Department should launch an investigation and find out what happened.
I wouldn't be surprised if like he legit died of illness because he was living a very unhealthy life. But in retrospect, I really don't care much about it. One of the grossest things after the drama was, I was completely kicked out of everything. Um, so I had to rebuild everything from scratch. And I made a very deliberate decision back then in 2017 that I was just going to build something completely new that isn't involved with any of that stuff, any of the cultural stuff. And this is something that really infuriated me. It's actually something that goes on to this day. As soon as I had success, the very same people who cancelled me slipped into my DMs, and we're like, "Oh, we're still friends. Oh, buddy, you make such great videos. Want to collab? Want to come on my stream?" It's been really gross, and I had to deal for like from 2019, which is when I started getting successful again, right up to 2022, with like all these right wing people trying to drag me into their anti-SJW shit again. And then a different curious thing happened, like started happening 2 years ago, which is that now all the left wing creators, not all of them, but some of them try to drag me into their shit. So I'm not being allowed to move on, basically.
Well,
Yeah. That's
why do you agree to this interview?
well, you're not one of them, I guess. At least the fact that you were in the anti-alt-right group definitely makes me trust you more than a lot of other people. But it's like the reason why I look back at all of this with so much regret is when you were involved in this, you're not allowed to move on anymore. It's so like I like you said, like as an anti-SJW YouTuber, I grew to 130,000 subscribers. I lost 90,000 of those when I got cancelled by the anti-SJW sphere for making the anti-alt-right videos. And I rebuilt my channel from that to almost 600,000 now. But still, all these years later, these people who, some of which used to be my friends, some of who I used to make videos against, they just don't let you go. Like being involved in this entire thing for me was just a mistake. I wish I had started on YouTube making the videos that I make today.
But would you be the person you are today without these experiences?
Yes, certainly some things have like shaped me. Like I don't do response or attack videos. I don't speak negatively about any other social media creator.
Except Lawrence Southern. And Coach
True.
Red Pill.
Fuck.
He's not a creator anymore, though. I guess so. I guess that's.
Well, I guess I'd say I don't make videos where I do shit. I did shit on Lauren Southern in a video because you need to understand. I really hate her. I think she's a really awful person. But I try really hard to stay out of any and all drama. Really, really hard. That's one thing that I learned. I'm very insulated. I don't really talk to a lot of other YouTubers. I stick to myself, mostly. And I don't trust people. Like most social media creators, I'm just very distrustful of almost everyone.
Is that a good way to be?
It's tough. It's harder because if you don't have people to shout you out, growing your channel is a very slow and gradual slog. You have to very slowly and meticulously build shit. I could probably be at 1 million subs already if I had just, gone out there and gotten shout outs and collabs with other people. But I decided, no, I'm going to build everything I have by myself. And yeah. I mean, one thing that I'm really proud of when I look at my analytics, right? I barely have a large subscriber overlap. Like the biggest other creator with who I share large overlap is the Twitch streamer, former Twitch streamer, now YouTube streamer Destiny, with who I share. I think it's 12% of my audience. And that's my biggest overlap. Before that, when I was an anti-sjw YouTuber, almost 40% of my audience came from Sargon, right? So that's also sort of a lesson that I learned out of all of this. It's really bad to have a large audience overlap with people. It's good to just to build as much as you can by yourself for yourself,
So
at least on
you
social media.
you make your own content on YouTube, and you don't really interact with a whole lot of other people. Like someone like Destiny,
I
who you have a
miss it.
large.
I miss it. I have to be honest. It's like a missing limb. I fucking miss being part of a large community. I wish there was a liberal community on YouTube,
Well, there
not a
is, but
leftist
they're
community.
streamers mostly though.
Yeah, I'm
So
not a
like,
streamer, so I
so
can't really get in there.
but like, what do you think of that approach though? Like Destiny's approach or my approach, other people too. A lot of them are liberals, and we take on these illiberal ideas, these the far right, the far left, and we debate them. We do research, stuff like this. What do you think of that approach to trying
I
to
think that's good.
engage in discussion?
If you do that, do that. Like I'm actually working on something like that myself. I'll tell you in private. I don't want that public. Um, yeah, I've tried very, very hard for the last few years to put liberal ideas out there, but in sort of a context of like state building and the history of how political developments happened, how certain states came to be. That is sort of my interest. I didn't want to debate them with others. I wanted to put liberal ideas out there through that. I don't know if I'm succeeding at that. And yeah. Yeah, I do miss it. I fucking miss it. I do miss being part of a community of creators.
So I that's something I've experienced myself because so during Gamergate I was heavily involved, and so I had that community built in to my content creation and to my online presence. But now that Gamergate's way over, and I also took a break for several years from YouTube, but I came back.
Mm.
I deleted everything in the intervening period because I quit YouTube, and I was like, well, I'm going to
Mm.
focus on real life. I'm going to build my career. I graduated college, and so I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put this
Same.
YouTube stuff behind me and be done. But then I came back. Um, so when I came back, I don't have that community anymore. Like I'm, and also I'm highly independent, right? So I'm not like, oh, I'm in the conservative camp, the progressive camp, the social democrat camp.
Mm.
I'm highly independent, and I have like opinions across like the political spectrum, I guess, or like view, like not even like, yeah, I guess so, right? Because like my view on Kyle Rittenhouse that trial would not go over very well with like the super woke people, obviously. And then at the same time, like my views on, let's say, Trump would not go over very well with like the conservative crowd. And so I just care about what's true and what's accurate, and I don't care about like, oh, my camp, I have to virtue signal to this group or that group or this group, and
Mhm.
pander to them and make stuff up to appease that crowd. But when you're independent like that, it's great because you don't have well you don't have to worry about, one, you're not lying to people, so you don't have to keep track of shit, and two, it's just you're able to analyze things clearly and more accurately. But at the same time, there's a lot of drawbacks to not having that community, and I do miss it at times.
Yeah, I do. I definitely miss it. I miss like getting advice, talking about like the videos we make. I miss the streams. That's one of the things that I miss a lot. Like just hanging out with people, shooting the shit. But yeah, that just isn't like I'm pretty much the only liberal YouTuber out there, with the exception there's another guy called Brit Monkey, but I haven't been reaching out to him. I kind of shy away from building a community, I guess, and I sort of behave like an asshole on Twitter, deliberately.
You're not alone there.
To
That's
yeah,
everyone's advice, it seems.
yeah. Nah, I have sometimes wondered if I should go more on Destiny streams and be more involved with him because he's like the biggest liberal creator in terms of like streaming.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I'm sort of like in his community insofar as I'm in any community. Um, but yeah,
he's doing a really good job at that as
he
well.
is. He actually inspired me to start streaming. He's the one who got me
Yeah.
involved with this.
Oh, he's making me rethink some of the videos that I'm making. I've recently had a conversation with him in private where I asked him about some. Again, we'll talk about that in private.
All right.
Future Culted West, but yeah. I mean, I hope maybe it comes to be. Maybe there comes to be a sort of liberal center community, center ground community. I
Well,
really wish that would be in the
he's
future.
making a news website where he's going to hire a bunch of journalists, supposedly, who are like who he thinks do a good job and will present the news accurately. And so like maybe that will be the start of something that'll be useful if he can do that successfully.
Maybe.
It's a huge undertaking though.
I thought about opening a live streaming YouTube channel, just shooting this shit with random libs that I find. I tried talking other liberals that I encounter into opening YouTube channels, but not with a lot of success, I have to say.
Honestly, I
A
think he
lot.
should do the streaming thing. I think there's a lot of people interested in it. In fact, I know that there's other streamers out there and they'll actually watch your stuff on their shows because they find you like
Really?
highly, yeah, like food shops used to watch your stuff all the time. Um, because like
Okay.
they find you highly informative and like, well, let's try and learn something and ahead of during downtime.
Yeah, that's the thing that I like, my self isolation, the fact that I don't talk to other creators and just isolate myself. Yeah, so I'm not even aware of people who watch. I was only aware of like one guy who streamed my videos. That was one of those React assholes. You know, the guy who watches your shit and just doesn't say anything. Like that fuckhead who like he watched my videos and basically every 5 minutes he would say, "Yeah, yeah, that yeah." Oh, that guy drove me up a fucking wall back then. That was like 3 years ago, or something.
Yeah, react harder. Well,
Nah,
that's
it's just like, well,
well. So, do you have any thoughts on that? Because that was a big controversy like last year, where a couple of YouTubers pointed out that, hey, look,
I
a lot of
don't
these
know.
streamers are watching other people's stuff, and in some cases it's fair use, right? Because they're giving commentary, they're providing an artistic change to it, whatever the fuck, right? But in other cases, they're just sitting there and they say one word every 2 minutes or 5 minutes to try and like make it look like it's fair use. Um,
Like now that I'm thinking about it, I don't want to be like one of those nasty movie studios that flag people down for just showing a clip or something like that, right? The point, sorry, burped again. The point that I've reached at this point is okay, you can react to my stuff, but do me the favor and at least link to my channel. That's all that I'm going to ask. And say something like basically that was a nice video. That's enough. Yeah, but it's like yeah, or that or your critiques or whatever. But yeah, I know
so
what you're talking about. Like there were React YouTubers who like literally just said nothing or even left
yeah,
the
like
room.
the Hassan live Hassan reaction, and it's his chair.
I'm supposed not to talk about him, like so.
Oh,
Yeah, I have an agreement with someone about that.
you have an agreement to
Um,
keep quiet about him?
I'll tell you this. I have Polish patrons, around 10, and oh my god, for like 2 years now they've been asking me to make a video attacking him.
You should do it. I
Uh,
don't. You shouldn't silence
no,
yourself.
no, I'm not. I'm not. Like I'm very committed to this no drama rule that I've set up myself. Very committed to it. And I don't care what he says, and I don't care about like they kept sending me clips about stuff that he said about Polish people, like, how all Eastern Europeans are supposedly like savage, backward, primitive people or something. Yeah, but nah,
So
I don't want to do that.
I'm gonna push back, Kraut. Okay, all right. I'm gonna be the guy. Okay. So
Okay.
Hassan is the largest Twitch streamer, political Twitch streamer in the world. He has a massive
Mhm.
audience. He's going on other people's shows. He's going on Piers Morgan, for instance. He's saying a lot of crazy shit about Ukraine, about the Chinese Communist Party. He's saying stuff about Houthi rebels and how they're justified in attacking civilian merchant ships. Okay, like this guy's completely off the rails. Okay, and he also lies about Gamergate a lot too. Though I'm sure you don't care about much about those those claims he makes. But he spreads a huge amount of misinformation. I think that making a video or debating him or something like that, I think doing something like that and countering
Okay.
that information, I think that would be useful.
A counterpoint. So there's a Polish friend of mine who kept telling me when Russia invaded Ukraine, he did this thing where it was like, oh, it's the Americans' fault, blah, 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 blah. And they kept posting Mersheimer clips as well, he and his orbiters. And a Polish friend of mine kept sending me, said, look, do a response video, debunk Hassan. Instead, what I did was I made a video critiquing realism. Don't know if you saw it, but
Maybe I've seen a
a
lot of your
critique
stuff,
of
but
realism. Yeah. That video is probably one of the best I've made in like the last few years. And it is infinitely better than any video I could have made attacking Hassan Piker. I'm pretty sure if I made a video attacking Hassan Piker or any of these lefties, any of these bread tubers, most of my audience would be bored as fuck. I think it would be a forgettable video. I think it would be pointless. All it would serve would there would be an antagonism that would be created. I would be sucked into countless back and forths and fights with people, and I don't see the point of that. I really, 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 really don't see the point of doing that. I think it's boring. I think it's unproductive. I'll just give you a list of the shit that I'm working on right now. Like I'm working on a video explaining why Germany is so horribly bureaucratic, why it has such enormous, big, stupendous bureaucracy. Another video that explains why bureaucracy is a necessity to statecraft. Another video explaining why Hungary is such a corrupt country, where its institutions of corruption come from.
I wouldn't. That
Another
sounds
video.
interesting, actually, especially with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a video on Orban planned as well, explaining how he destroyed I democracy. I have a video planned on anti-communist dissidents and the liberalism of the Eastern Bloc that evolved out of combating communist tyranny. Like, these are the things that I think are far, like, you, and I bet the chat, I don't know where the chat is, but I bet, let's just say, let me just post this to you. Isn't that stuff infinitely better than any video I could make attacking any sort of left-wing streamer or YouTuber?
I think that's important work. I think that having that grounded sort of analysis and being able to put out those super long videos that are providing a lot of information with a lot of sources, I think that's good and important. Don't get me wrong, I think that's great. But I think there's also value in countering misinformation, right? And because like if he's out there and he's got millions of people watching him and he's telling people all over the world, but especially in the United States, oh, we shouldn't be supporting Ukraine. Oh, China's actually good. They brought civilization to Tibet. That's his claim, right? He brought no, he believes it. They brought civilization because he says Tibet had slavery, and so therefore, when the Han Chinese took over, they got rid of slavery. They brought civilization to Tibet. That's what his claim is.
I'm sorry, I had to go get a drink.
No, you're good. If you need like a user restroom or grab a drink, just let me know.
I need a drink to deal with that shit. Oh my god, bringing civilization.
But when he's got these ideas out there with millions of people watching him, like, don't you think there's value in like
you're not
countering that
exaggerating.
information? No, he's
You're
literally
not exaggerating.
he might not have used the word civilization, but it was something along those lines. He used something very, very, very similar rhetoric, and he did say it was because China got rid of slavery in Tibet, and that's why he supports China invading Tibet.
Okay, I'm going to counterpoint by saying, fuck, what am I gonna say? I took my way out of this one. Do you know who Stephen Kotkin is?
No.
He's a historian of the Soviet Union and Stalinism, in particular Stalinism. He's sort of the world's leading expert on the history of Stalinism. And he wrote this theory, which I believe in, which is that authoritarian anti-democratic movements are inherently self-destructive. And that a great way of combating authoritarian movements is to give them just enough space where they have to organize a community and structure themselves. And if you give them that space, their own words, their own nastiness will tear themselves apart, will lead to them tearing themselves apart. I think that is very much true, because if you remember, not just now in real life experiences, like how the Soviet Union collapsed into itself because it was unable to provide a functioning social contract, but also think of how the alt-right on YouTube collapsed, right? In the years after I made my videos and we apparently worked together, even though I don't remember you, and sorry for that.
Yes, okay.
They tore themselves apart. Remember, they did nothing but drama videos. As soon as they had to organize their own community, they didn't and had nothing to consolidate their attacks against, and where they had to no longer had a community that they could infiltrate and undermine. They just ripped each other apart.
Well, I think part of it too was that they got pushback, right? Because people like Destiny were debating them, and also the BreadTube people you mentioned, right? And also people like you and me, we were criticizing them. I think that actually hurt them a lot.
And then I'll surrender that to Destiny. then let Destiny do it. Destiny is better than me in doing this.
Well, I think it requires a multi-prong approach. I think video essays are like a valid part of that too.
I now know why you got me on this stream. You're trying to talk me into making videos of Hassan.
No, you can if you want. I don't care.
Okay.
Like Hassan's such a clown though. It's like it's like the political analysis of like a 5-year-old. Okay.
You know,
like, I'm sorry,
I forced myself not to watch him or to look at his tweets because I know that I would be tempted. But I really don't want to avoid drama. I really want to avoid drama. Really do. It's just I maybe I'm wrong, but I do genuinely believe that like that bread tube sphere is on the verge of it's already kind of actually tearing itself apart, right? And that people like Hassan and Co are basically just in the process of destroying what is left of leftist YouTube, and that for a liberal sphere to come to be, all that we need to do is just make a good case for ourselves. And I think if we waste energy, I shouldn't say we because there isn't a liberal community yet, but I would say that I think that any energy that I would put into attacking people like Hassan Piker and Co would be wasted.
Okay, I mean that's your choice, and like maybe you're right. Like maybe the 20 hours you spend researching to debate Hassan on Ukraine or something, right? Maybe that time would have been better spent spending 20 hours making a video instead, right? I don't know like what the exact trade-offs are in each
my realism video got 1.2 million views, so I think that did pretty well. I didn't attack Hassan. I attacked the idea that he spread. Right, so I think that was far more successful.
Yeah, I generally try to. Well, I don't know. There's people who I think are bad faith actors, and I do think that calling them out is important too. But like anyway, I
agree. I agree, but I'm not the internet police. Yeah. I'm certainly not in a position to police other people's behavior. Certainly not with my record. I mean, you know.
What do you think the worst thing in your record is?
The worst thing I ever did on YouTube,
or in life.
In life, there's many things that I could go through.
On YouTube, we'll say.
The dumbest thing I've ever done in my life was drunkenly. I staggered up to a police officer from behind, and I stole his truncheon. I slipped it out of his belt, and I ran away with it. I've never run so fast in my life. But yeah, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done because he could have shot me for fuck's sake.
You know what? The dumbest thing I've done might have been with a cop too. Actually, in high school, we had a resource officer, and we were on like great terms with him. It was like the end of the semester, and I pulled a prank on him, where I put a thumbtack in my hand because we'd like high five each other and stuff on a regular basis. It was a really dumb idea. I high fived him with the thumbtack, and it did not go well.
The thing that I did on YouTube that I regret the most is probably the transphobia. That is the thing that I regret the most. That's the thing that actually makes me feel bad. Really bad. Because I know for a fact that I actually hurt people for doing that. And I've talked to people who I have hurt. It's also the reason why I don't bring that topic up very often, because it's sort of I'm shamefully quiet in that regard. But that's the thing that I definitely, in YouTube terms, the thing that I did that was probably the worst was probably the transphobic attacks that I directed against trans YouTubers.
So
one person.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm not going to tell you who it is. Go ahead.
So yeah, actually, Gamergate was my first interaction with transgender people because there's a lot of trans people who supported Gamergate, and I guess it made me more like sympathetic to understand like what that community's like. And so I was never really like anti-trans. I was always pretty pro. Like I don't like pro as in like I think that you shouldn't be discriminated against on the basis of immutable characteristics and I'll treat you like a person, right? Now like, but what do you think of like the trans issue as a general matter? Because obviously there's a lot of like.
My views were very much what people would call turfish, I guess. But what changed my mind dramatically was when a friend of mine came out of the closet. That's basically what changed my mind on that matter. Yeah. Nah, I sort of like. Yeah, I don't know if this is the right place to talk about it, to be honest with you. Like, there's a trans streamer who asked me if I wanted to talk with her about it eventually. Maybe I will. But yeah, that's like of all the regrets of the things that I did on YouTube, that is definitely the biggest regret.
So you think that like you made a video in which you were somewhat or even completely transphobic
I
about
made
saying
one video. I made one video where I took a trans YouTuber. I responded to a trans YouTuber. She was like this very left wing. I'm not gonna give away who it was.
ContraPoints?
Some. No, no, no. I'm not. I'm not gonna tell you who it was. She made a video talking about LGBT rights outside of the West, and very, very. Maybe I don't know if she was uneducated or not, but she said that she doesn't know what the LGBT rights situation in the Middle East is, places like Saudi Arabia and Iran. And that was. I don't want to say that. I don't want to give away if like okay, if you hear that, you might want to say, yeah, that was a stupid thing to say. Fine. But the thing that I did was that I took clips of her and I called her a man. This dude, this guy, he he is wrong. That's and I did that. I remember that I did that deliberately. And I was sort of malicious. So I do regret that one a lot.
Well, I'm glad
Thinking
you were.
back of it, I I didn't really do that many personal attacks against people on YouTube, certainly on Twitter. I was vicious on Twitter back then. But yeah, that one, because it was a video and because I personally directed it against someone, I do fucking regret that one really a lot. I have never apologized to that person yet because, yeah, I don't want to intrude in her life to a degree.
Do you think like just sending
Very
her an
done.
email saying, "Hey, look, you might not even remember me, but I'm this YouTuber named Kraut, and 10 years ago or
Maybe
7 years
one
ago, I
day,
made a
maybe
video."
one day. But you know, I had a conversation with an old gamergater who wanted to write an apology letter to Zoe Quinn,
Oh?
and I told, yeah, yeah, and I told him, don't do that, don't do that.
Wait, what did
Even
he
if you,
do? Who was it?
I'm not going to tell you.
What did he do though?
Well, it's like, nah. I told him that if you genuinely believe that you've wronged someone, you should think about like that's not just. Maybe I shouldn't have given him as an example, but I genuinely believe that if you feel that you wronged someone and you just go out there to apologize to them to make yourself feel better, that's not the purpose of an apology because then it puts the onus on that person to forgive you. So the best thing you can do is acknowledge that you were wrong and that you did wrong. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, well,
So
I don't know if I agree. I think that I think people should apologize, even if it's like not expected necessarily. And like if they choose not to forgive you, then like whatever, that's their choice. They can choose not to, and maybe they're right not to forgive you. But what did this guy
it's a
do?
weird
I have to
thing.
know. I'm
I'm not
investigating
gonna tell.
Gamergate.
I'm not gonna tell you.
Did he
I'm not gonna
harass her?
tell you.
Answer that at least.
I, no.
Okay. Well, I don't care then. Well, because well, if he just like made a joke about like Five Guys burgers and fries, like I don't care. I don't think that's like a big deal.
Ah, maybe I'll tell you what they.
All right.
That's by the way the reason why I hate the word reformed so much. It's like man, it's like for the last 3 years, especially now that like it's honestly something that really aggravates me. It's something that really gets under my skin is I've put so much work into building a channel separate from all of this shit and like I told you before there's all these people who try to drag me back into this shit, right? And all these people, especially the left wing ones, they keep saying stuff like, "Oh, I thought you were reformed. I thought you were reformed. I thought you were reformed. Oh, you should come on my stream and personally apologize to me for your existence." Da, 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 da. It's such a gross word because it's meaningless. What it basically means is sort of you need to grovel to me and suck my dick. Is how most people use that word basically. It's kind of yeah. I hate that word. I fucking hate it.
Well,
I
Kraut,
get.
I heard you're reformed, and so I want to ask you, okay? Will you
My per-
apologize to me for being white?
no, no. God. Nah, it's also just that certain people just won't leave you alone. Is I guess the main thing. It's insane that people still ask me to make attack videos of some of these people. Fuck me.
All right, so What do you think of the upcoming election in the United States?
Mm. I think Trump will lose. I think Trump will lose because he lost the defense Republicans, the ones who vote Republican because they want high defense spending, because they want NATO to continue, because they believe that the US has an important military role to play in the world. He lost those. They're not going to vote for him. And that's a substantial Republican voting bloc.
Well, I hope conservatives, libertarians, or anybody who is considering voting for Trump, I hope anyone who is strongly reconsiders their mind right now, and go watch some of my content, and you'll see good arguments there. But also just keep watching this too; you'll see some good arguments, I'm sure. So you think he's going to lose because he's anti-Ukraine, basically, and anti-NATO?
Not just because he's anti-Ukraine, but because he's pro-despot. Like, I have a buddy. He's an army veteran, very to the core Republican, right? Like his dad knew Reagan, like really, really, really fucking Republican. Yeah, he told me I'm not gonna vote for this guy because of how he palled around with Kim Il Sung. Or which Kim is it? Kim Il Jung or Kim? One of the Kims, the North Korean one. The way he palled around with the North Korean dictator, the way he palled around with Putin. Like, you should not ignore that there are people in the US in the conservative voting sector who really fucking despise it when people hang around with like tyrants, anti-Western tyrants specifically.
I
And I think
I,
those
I
people will
don't.
vote him in.
The polls show it's pretty close.
So far, but the polls were also saying that Hillary Clinton would win. So
Right,
I'm
and
not
now
entirely-
right. So if the polls are wrong in the same direction again, we could really be fucked.
Yeah. No, I think Trump will lose. I mean, I might eat my words, in which case we're going to live in a much more dangerous world, especially in Europe. Like, Europe is basically, policy-wise here in Europe, what we did for the last fucking 20, ever since the end of the Cold War, we basically ran on a policy of, like, everything will be fine in the end. We always expected the best outcome in the end. That underlined most of our foreign and defense policies. That's over. We now run on the sort of assumption that let's prepare for the worst possible outcome. And under that assumption, we're already gearing up our ammunition production, etc., for the eventuality that Trump becomes president and pulls out of NATO. So we're really getting ready for that one already. So if it happens, sure, it will be tough on everyone, but I think Europe will prevail against the Russians.
So, what's your? I know you're in Germany, but what's your
I live in
message to the?
Austria.
I'm sorry, where?
I live in Austria.
Austria.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. So,
People are confused there. I'm a dual national. People always keep it. How are you German and Austrian? I thought you're one of this. I'm a dual national.
so what's your message then to the people who are still leaning towards voting for Trump or considering it? What do you see? What's your argument against to try and change those people's minds, essentially?
He's a tyrant. He tried to end your republic. He's outlined a plan to end your republic. And he buddies around with the worst anti-Western tyrants, from the Stalinist shit show in North Korea to the fascist cunt who rules Russia. Like, you don't want someone like that to be your president. Certainly not of a republic. It will be the death of the republic if you elect him again. Quite possibly, yeah.
Quite possibly it will. He did try to coup the United States of America, which like is a very
Yeah.
big deal. I know he wants everybody to forget
And he
about
got
his
away
little
with
coup
it.
attempt, but
He got away with it
yeah.
for some fuck reason.
Well, he is under indictment, but it's going to happen after the trial's going to happen after the election. So
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, so you said he's got a new plan. Are you talking about 2025 or something else? What's this
The
new?
2025 thing, the Heritage Foundation thing.
I've
I
not looked
downloaded
into
it
this.
and-
Can you explain it to my audience and myself?
I have only started reading it. Mainly, they've drawn up a list, for example, of government employees that they're going to purge.
I saw
They're
that. Yeah.
basically going to gut almost everything that is in the government. They're basically like, a state is supposed to be an impartial thing. It exists as a toolbox where the people who are elected to represent you can use these tools within limitations. There's a reason why we have separations of powers, right? This plan basically will basically make the entire state toolbox right wing. Like reappoint everything and everyone to be right wing, gut entire institutions, and basically end the separation of powers within the United States. Yeah. It's like you're not just going to live under a government in the next Trump presidency. You're going to live in a fully far right. It's like the only countries who have done things like this are tin pot South American dictatorships. That's basically it. Yeah.
So one thing that Trump claimed recently is that he's going to pull out of Ukraine essentially immediately. What do you think of that?
What is he going to pull out? What is he going to pull out?
Well, there's well, it's true.
What is he going to pull out? Yeah,
I think he's signaling to Putin. I think that's what the real thing is. I think that he's saying this out loud in public so that he can get Putin's support to help him win the election, possibly.
I think what he's going to do is like no longer send American equipment to Ukraine. Like I don't know how much have you been following like the OSINT accounts and all that stuff. OSINT, the intelligence.
It's not a huge amount. I mean, I follow a bunch of them on Twitter. But
so the big revelation of the Ukraine war is the Russian army is garbage. They're not capable of doing combined arms warfare, and their equipment is absolutely subpar. The tanks, all the active protection systems, etc., that they developed in like the 2000s and 2010s, which are supposedly cutting edge and the equals to the American stuff, are basically 1990s and 1980s level crap. And another thing that was revealed through the American aid packages is the complete and utter superiority of American weaponry. Do you know what a Bradley is?
What, the tank?
It's a troop transport vehicle.
Oh, yes.
It's built to don't worry about it. Like most people probably don't know, it's supposed to transport troops to the front line on a protected vehicle, right? It's not designed to build tanks, to fight tanks, but we've seen one Bradley take on an entire Russian tank column and basically wipe it out. Just absolutely superior. Now, the Americans already gave 300 Bradleys, I think, to the Ukrainians, and they're using them to decimate the fucking Russians. And yeah, I guess if Trump becomes president again and does his so-called pullout, what will actually happen is he will no longer send more of this American equipment there. And it's really, you know what the really dumb thing about all of this is? What you're sending to Ukraine, by the way, is your old stuff from the 90s. It's stuff that you would have been throwing away because it's decommissioned. And it's fucking hilarious if you think about it. Your old military shit from the 90s beats the new stuff the Russians built in the 2010s. Which is, yeah. You actually save money by sending ammunitions and equipment to the Ukrainians, because the stuff you send is stuff that you would have otherwise had to pay to decommission, to take apart, to throw away, right? And this way you get to ship it away, and it will actually be used. So it's actually a win-win for you. But yeah, if Trump does that, okay, no more American equipment. That means no more Bradleys, which are really effective. No more HIMARS missiles, which have proven to be really effective. No more ATACMS, which have also proven to be highly effective. But the Ukrainians will still be able to source artillery shells and Leopard tanks and scalp missiles from the rest of Europe. So they will still be able to keep on the fight, but it will be a tougher fight. The thing is that the Ukrainians changed tactics recently. Like, they no longer try to launch a counteroffensive to drive the Russians out of the land. They're basically now digging in and trying to kill as many Russians as possible in the hope that it will degrade the Russian capacity, which it probably is. I can show you some. Do you know what a bukana is?
No, I do not.
Okay, so in Russian military development, right, they have a vehicle called the BMP, right? It's their version of an armored troop transporter, like their version of the Bradley. And it turned out to be crap. The BMP-4 was made in the 90s, and when the war began, the Russians used the BMP-4 to use their troops, to transport their troops in, right? What we're seeing now is you could actually follow this as the war progressed throughout the last 2 years. After about half a year, the BMP-4s disappeared. Then the BMP-3s, which were made in the 80s, appeared. Then the BMP-2s, which were made in the 70s, started appearing because all the BMP-3s were suddenly all gone. Then the BMP-1s that were made in the 60s started appearing. Then we saw BTR-50s. These are vehicles that were made in designed in 1947 started appearing. And now even those are starting to disappear. And the Russians are increasingly using Bukharas, which are fucking vans, Soviet vans, that lack sort of proper steering and proper brakes and were made from the 1970s onward. They're running out of gear. And I think like the tactic that the Ukrainians are using now, which is just grind down the Russian capacity, grind down their gear, it's working. And it would be great if the Americans could continue supporting this grinding down of the Russian army, because keep in mind, a world without a large threatening Russian army is a better world. It is a better world, a much better world.
So
sorry for going on a tangent.
No, Ukraine stuff is actually important. It's gonna make a good video clip. So, what do you see the current state of the battlefield being though right now? Where do you think we're at?
It's the Ukrainians have dug in, and they're basically training new brigades. They're using drones, like small FPV drones, to an incredibly effective way. Like they've basically, what they did across the country is that they turned every single little workshop that exists into a drone factory. And the Ukrainian people are basically building one drone after another, like these really shitty little drones. And they attach grenades and anti-tank grenades and mines to them, and then they fly them into enemy bunkers, enemy soldiers, enemy vehicles. And that tactic proved to be extraordinarily effective. Just sit back in your defensive line and just keep picking off the Russians. And they're also really innovative in the stuff they do. I recently tweeted out a video. I can send this video to you. It's really gross, actually.
Sure.
So you know that in Europe we're having a heat wave right now, right?
I actually wasn't aware, but yes, thanks for...
Yeah. What the Ukrainians started doing when the heat wave was coming was they started targeting Russian transports that were transporting water to the Russian trenches and front line. And the result of that was that the Russians ran out of drinking water. And where's the video of this? Wait, I'll find the video. Russian soldiers started drinking, I'm not making this up, trench water. The puddles that form in trenches. Like literally the same puddles that they shit and piss in and where corpses decay. They started drinking that because they ran out of water. So it's tactics like these, like slowly and carefully and meticulously, also taking advantage of different opportunities when they come. I think the Ukrainians right now, they have the upper hand because they're simply, they're better at adapting to the challenges that the battlefield currently brings up. All right.
Well, I hope you're right. Now, how do you know how much of this stuff you're seeing, like the Russian soldiers drinking the piss? Like, how do you know how much of that is real versus how much of it is propaganda, or I mean, not propaganda, but like how much of it is like fake information?
There's something OSINT are like open source intelligence accounts, right? I should warn you, not all of them are trustworthy. I would actually say that a majority of them are not trustworthy, but I can DM you some of them. These are people who basically collect social media posts and videos, posted by Ukrainians, by Russians on the front line, etc., etc. And then they analyze it and they post the results. Here, this is one of the bigger ones. One of the most famous ones is probably Oryx. Have you ever heard of Oryx?
I don't think so, but yeah, if you can send me some good ones, I'll follow them for sure. Because I'm
Okay.
looking for,
Oryx,
I'm actually possibly covering the Ukraine war in greater detail in the future, using some of the stuff I've learned from the Gamergate project.
Oryx is a guy. He's based in the Netherlands. What he does is he collects social media posts of destroyed military vehicles in Ukraine, and he made a list of visually confirmed military losses. It's because of him that we know that Russia has by now definitely lost 16,619 vehicles, military vehicles in Ukraine. Of which, let me read here, 12,008 have been destroyed, 752 damaged, 946 abandoned, and 2,913 captured. So there is a lot of open source intelligence being used. And open source intelligence is generally something to follow here. I can give you something else. I mean, this is a bit of a shameless plug. I hope you don't mind this. If you seek to support the Ukrainians through private means, there's a project called the Wild Hornets. So the Ukrainians call the drones that they use to really inflict havoc on the Russian lines, they call them Wild Hornets. And this is basically an organization which collects money and materials to build these drones. All right.
I've interviewed Anastasia Pereskova, and I've actually interviewed her for my channel. She runs like a private.
Wonderful person.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
She does a lot of volunteer work with helping the soldiers get equipment and stuff. And I've not donated to her, but I've interviewed her for my show on my channel.
Good.
And Dylan
good.
Burns does a lot of Ukraine content too.
Yeah, he visited me before he went to Ukraine. I thought about going to Ukraine, been invited, but I'm not sure if I should go. I don't want to get in the way of an arms transport.
So, is the Russian offensive in Kharkiv collapsing? That's what I've seen. I don't know if it's
Yeah, it's dead. It's dead. It's been a complete catastrophe for the Russians. They've lost a shit ton of equipment, up to 600 vehicles, possibly even more. They're literally running out of vehicles, by the way. That's something that a lot of people... That's stunning, if you think about it. Like, they literally had... before the war, they probably had warehouses filled with probably up to 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 old Soviet military vehicles. They're burning through almost all of it. They're losing it. They're losing all this stuff. And it's crazy. It's crazy to watch them throw all that shit away. Half the Black Sea Fleet is gone, has been sunk. That's also a great military innovation that the Ukrainians have worked on. They created maritime drones. Basically just a speedboat filled up with explosives and a camera on top and a remote control system to guide it. And they sent those out into the Black Sea to crash into Russian ships and blow them up. Wow.
You say that
There's a lot going on.
You say the Ukrainians are digging in. So do you think they're going to retake the Donbass at any point, or is that going to be a victory condition of this war?
I don't know. Like, that's the thing. You never know how war ends. You never know what the outcome is. We don't know what could happen next. You know, we could see a disaster for Ukraine. Their last counter-offensive failed miserably. The thing that everyone is waiting for right now is the introduction of modern Western fighter jets, like the F-16 and the Mirage 2000. The Ukrainians are already preparing the battlefield for that. They're destroying air defenses, Russian air defenses, with targeted strikes. And the Russians are desperately trying to counter that by pulling their own air defense systems out of everywhere else. Like, the border between Finland and Russia is currently almost completely unguarded because they're pulling almost everything out. And once the F-16 is introduced, we get the capacity, the possibility at the very least, that Ukraine may achieve air dominance over parts of the battlefield. And if they can achieve that, that would be the most amazing thing that they can get. Because if they can achieve air dominance, they can just roll right through the Donbass.
So, do you think the fighter jets are going to make the difference? Essentially, air superiority for Ukraine.
Only if the Ukrainians can actually achieve it. And to achieve that, they have to go hunt for air defense systems. They have
including
the
some that are in Russia, but the Americans are only giving them permission to strike.
No, the Americans. The Americans gave them permission to strike the air defense.
Only in certain areas, though, right?
Yeah, but those are within the range. Like the Pantsers, the SAM systems, the books, etc. Those have to be stationed within those regions to be effective over Ukraine. So the Ukrainians got what they needed, and more importantly, what a lot of people forget is when you are taking down an air defense system, right? An air defense system doesn't just it's usually a truck with a launcher on it, right? But that is not the most important part of the system. An air defense unit is usually 4 to 5 trucks with missile launchers, and the more important vehicle is the truck with the radar system. And most strikes target the radar systems. And striking the radio systems is the most important thing because Russia can no longer replace these. With the sanctions currently in place on them, every radar system that is destroyed is a radar system that Russia will never get back.
Now, Russia has recently made a deal with North Korea, and they've been help from
Yeah,
China and Iran too, supposedly.
that has backfired spectacularly into their face because now South Korea is open to sending arms to Ukraine.
I hope they do. Now, there was talk of the Gripen being used in Ukraine, but I think they didn't do that because they were worried about two different weapon systems for fighter jets. But at the same time, then now they're talking about the Mirage. So why
Yeah.
wouldn't they use the Gripen as well?
I think the Swedes already said that they're training pilots on the Gripen.
So they are going to do that for sure.
Yeah.
We have a question from the chat from Airplay Doc. He's Raymond Wellman. He actually created the documentary, one of the two videos I
Oh,
sent you.
oh,
He asks
okay.
about, oh, do you think Putin will be tempted to deploy nuclear weapons?
No. I think he will be cooed out of power. I
I,
think he will be cooed out of power. If he tries that shit, like I think I don't know who exactly revealed it, but there was a revelation recently that um, when the war broke out, China and India confronted the Russians and told them basically, if you use nukes, even if it's just tactical nukes, forget it. We will turn against you.
and I actually don't think Putin's going to use nukes. I mean, I think that he has played with the idea publicly for domestic support and to fearmonger internationally. I think he's not going to though. I think if you like watch his interview with like Tucker Carlson, for instance, he makes it like very clear he's not going to. And then he also signed that pledge recently with
Can
China,
I show you
where
something?
he's where they both agreed that nuclear weapons should never be used. You
I'm
can
gonna
screen
show you
share if you want.
something. Um, fuck, I have so much shit open. I'm not sure if I want to switch. Okay, wait. So I've been doing this little side project when I'm kind of bored. Well, not really bored, but where is it? Okay, okay. So I've basically been. Wait, I forgot which chat I'm in. I've been browsing Russian social media because one thing that a lot of people forget is that the Russians still claim that the official casualties are only 6,000. But we know that the Russian casualties, must be somewhere probably already reaching 200,000, if not even more. And what happens is when Russian soldiers are killed and the Russian regime denies that they've been killed, the families of these soldiers are simply ghosted. The wives, the daughters, the mothers, the regime officials, they just ghost them. They don't take their calls anymore. They hang up when they're called. They're just completely ghosted and they don't know what happened to the relative. And there's a curious thing that started happening on Russian social media recently, and I've been observing it. Of like I've been browsing Russian Telegram groups to take a look at this, of Russian mothers, daughters, brothers, fathers, etc., uploading videos asking, "Hey, have you seen my dad? Have you seen, etc. My my brother?" And I've been looking at these and just fucking look at how many there are. And this is just a snapshot of what I saw within like an hour. This is half of what I found within an hour. I think there's another one. I have to. Yeah, I've got another image here too. So within an hour, I've assembled all of this together, and these are all mothers, brothers, sisters, wives, all of them fathers also uploading videos going, have you seen this person? He's a soldier, he's in Ukraine, he was sent to Ukraine. He no longer takes calls, he no longer calls back, he no longer sends letters for months, for a year, possibly even more. The government doesn't tell me what happened to him. Have you seen them? This stuff, this here, right here, in my opinion, this is what probably will probably cause the first protests in Russia. I don't think that you can treat people like that and get away with it indefinitely, including in a regime as bad as that of Russia.
So one thing that you talked about in one of your videos was Russian authoritarianism, and it seems like you're fairly pessimistic on Russia becoming like a liberal democratic society at some point in the future.
Uh, right now, yeah, I am. Because, like, I think the worst case scenario will come true. What will happen is they either lose the war or they retain some of the territory they conquered, but they're going to basically become a gigantic version of North Korea. I don't see that regime getting overthrown. If you look at the political elites in Russia, they've successfully murdered everyone who could be a leading opposition figure. It's going to be bleak. They may have a regime change, but you keep in mind that the people who will change that regime are probably even more insane than the people currently in charge. So I see a very bleak future ahead.
Is there no hope in your view?
Of course, there's hope. There's always hope, but I think hope is a very dangerous thing, and that you shouldn't base your political decision makings on hope. Which is why I'm very happy that most of European policy has now changed to, let's prepare for the worst case scenario. I think that is the far wiser thing to do. Always prepare for the worst case. Always prepare for the worst. I'm glad that we're doing that right now. I'm glad that most of Europe is not preparing for normalization with Russia, but increasingly preparing for, yeah, we're going to have to deal with basically a gigantic North Korea in our neighborhood for the next half century, which is probably what is going to happen.
So I want to ask you about China as well, but we also have another war going on, the Israel-Palestine conflict. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Oh, I've been avoiding that topic like a plague. Man, you've seen how fucking nasty people have been around that conversation. It's like
I have,
nuts.
but I want to get your
Fucking
thoughts.
nuts. I believe in the two-state solution. That's what I'm gonna say. I believe in a two-state solution. I believe it's the only thing that can achieve peace, or at least peace without genocide. Anyone who advocates for a one-state solution is basically advocating for genocide, in my opinion. I've been really stunned and surprised by the anti-Semitism that resurfaced, especially from like the far left. You've probably seen that yourself in the US.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's been quite fucking something. That's been very disheartening. But yeah, I'm avoiding that topic for the time being because right now, it's attracting the worst people on the internet, the type of people whose attention you don't want.
Well, at the same time, though, isn't that mean that there's an opportunity for someone to do high-level political analysis in that area that's not being done right now?
What is there to say? I think Netanyahu should have resigned months ago, basically.
Why should he
Like,
resign?
because this happened on his watch, and all the fingers point to him as being the main partner in responsibility of this. There's several commissions and investigations already looking into what happened. One of the reports was that there was an Israeli intelligence officer who, for almost a year, observed Hamas training for October 7th and warned the Israeli high command, hey, something big is brewing, something big is happening. And apparently, the political leadership in Jerusalem dismissed her reports because she was a woman. Not joking. It was, oh, yeah, just a hysterical woman. What does she know?
And this
So,
was wait, who was the woman?
an intelligence officer based at the border with the Gaza Strip,
And
observing what was going on in the
the
Gaza Strip.
Israelis dismissed it because of her gender.
Apparently, that's one of the reports that I read shortly after. I think it was a month after October 7th that report was released. It's also you have to keep in mind that fucking Netanyahu's entire policy outlook was to keep Hamas in power in Gaza, to delegitimize the Palestinians in general. That has massively backfired now. Like and more importantly, that there weren't enough soldiers to defend the border because so many had to be sent to the West Bank to defend these fucking settlements that he had built for his stupid allies like Smotrich and that goon with the glasses. I forgot his name. Ben Gvir, yeah. So, yeah, no, I think the government should have resigned. I think the government should have resigned.
What's happening with Netanyahu trying to quote unquote reform the judiciary?
That is something that I haven't looked deeper into. Like it's almost certain some almost that issue has become almost irrelevant right now because right now, okay, granted this is my opinion of things. I think Israel is no longer fighting a war to destroy Hamas. It is or a war to save the hostages, but a war to save Netanyahu's career. And I don't like that. I think that will be very bad for the region, for the country, and yeah, that's my analysis. By the way, it's almost 3 in the morning. I would like to ask
Okay.
you if I could go to sleep.
Yeah, sorry. I was gonna ask you I had like 5 more questions. Well, they're big questions though. So,
We
um,
can stream again if you
oh yeah,
want, and I'll
we can
try my
stream again.
best.
Well, is there?
I try my best to be better prepared.
If this is gonna be the a book interview, I should ask you at least. Can I ask like 2 more Gamergate questions? I guess.
Sure, sure.
Okay. What's your big? First off, can you define what Gamergate is? I never really asked you that. Or Gamergate was.
Wow, on the spot. A group of people who thought they were being. Oh, fuck. A group of people who thought what they were doing was virtuous and mattered. Yeah,
All right. Well, hey, that's
maybe.
an answer. And then
I guess.
I do ask two people. But since you're more you were pro, but now you look at things and you look at things a little bit more neutrally, I guess.
Critically,
What's
I would
your
say.
critically? Let's say yes, critically. What's your message to the pro Gamergate people, and then also what's your message to the anti Gamergate people? What do you want them to reconsider
Those
from all
still
this?
exist.
Well,
Those still exist.
I don't like the movement's done, in my view at least, for
Yeah.
several years. But the people still exist. They still hold these opinions. So what's your message to the pro and to the antis? What should they take away?
To the pro gamergators, I would say that that's actually something that you might actually keep me up a little bit. To the pro gamergators, I would say look at what came out of it, especially on YouTube, anti-sjw YouTube. I don't think it was worth it. I think what came out of Gamergate was awful. Um, to the anti-Gamergate, I need to ask you personally. Like I got a lot of disillusioned leftists who joined my community over the last few years. And in the conversations that I've had with them, they keep telling me stuff like that BreadTube, or the people who we used to call SJWs, they're sort of increasingly becoming just as vicious and nasty as the anti-SJWs used to be. That they use the same sort of bullying tactics, the same nastiness, the same bland content repeating over and over again. Do you think that it might be the case that the people who were anti-Gamergate kind of won, but didn't learn the lessons that some of us learned?
I don't know. I don't know if they think they won or not. They might think they won, but the Gamergate people, they think they won too. The 2015
Everyone always
2016
thinks they
survey,
won.
they think that they won in that survey. Because Brad Glasgow and Chris Ferguson asked them, and then the people I've interviewed, they mostly think that they won as well. So it's like maybe they think they won as well, but I don't think they learned a lot of lessons. But also, BreadTube and anti-Gamergate are not necessarily the same thing. like a lot of the Bread2 people weren't really involved with Gamergate. They kind of came after more. But some of them were
I think some of
anti-Gamergate
them
too.
were, yeah.
Some of them were like Philosophy Tube. No, sorry, not Philosophy Tube. Shit. Fuck. Well, who was it? Um, I'm blanking on. I know Hannah Zamora's in the chat. She mentions them sometimes. Innuendo Studios, like they were anti-Gamergate. Um, so there were a few others too, for sure. Um,
I think like
but
it was a great experience for us. We learned a lot, right?
we did, yeah.
We certainly learned a lot,
But I think
and
a lot of these. Go ahead.
I think it's not their time to collapse.
So
They refuse to learn the lessons that we learned.
all right, and then my last question before I let you go, and we can talk again if you want, for sure. I'd be down for that.
Absolutely.
The next question would be, what do you think of this interview project?
Go ahead. It's always like okay. I'll be very upfront with you. It's always weird when someone talks about Gamergate 10 years later. It's always weird. But if you think you can do something to archive it for people to find, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, I
Who
think so
knows?
too. It's gonna be a multi-volume. It's gonna be a multi-volume book plus these live streams, and I'm making clips from the live streams as well. And I think it's really important because I think the historical narrative on this is wrong. Or there's not really a historical narrative yet, but
Nice.
this sort of the Wikipedia version of events, right? The Gamergate was a harassment campaign to drive women out of gaming. Like that's obviously not true. Like everybody knows that's not true. So what the fuck was it really? And so that's what I'm exploring. And I've also included a lot of the anti-Gamergate people's voices. I've interviewed a lot of those people too. It's not just pros.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that one. I've moved on to making videos about political developments of states. But yeah, the one thing that I definitely want to talk with you about again is like the prospect of a liberal community coming into being, because that's something that I kind of in the back of my head really want to see. Actually,
So
I'm really grateful for you for this opportunity to talk about things that I don't really often talk about. So my thoughts may have been a bit scattered because I've not tried to bury any of this because I still run the same YouTube channel that I used to back in the day. I wear the things that I did because I don't want to deny things that I did and was part of and was not part of, and things that failed and things that succeeded. I think it's all part of life, and one should be very honest about oneself all the time. But I rarely get the opportunity to speak about myself from my own perspective because a lot of people frame the conversation about me without asking me. It's something that is very annoying, especially in the political extremist circles. To the right wingers, I'm a commie. To the left wingers, I'm a Nazi, and I'm apparently don't get a say in how to frame it. Yeah, and I'm still not making a video about Hassan. You can forget about that ever happening. Never happening.
So we can have that. I don't know. This could be a super long discussion. I don't know, but the building a liberal community, I would be interested in discussing that with you. But is a community what's necessary, or is communities the problem, right? Is these different communities the
No, communities are not the problem. Communities are not the problem. It's like if I look back at my time in the anti-SJW sphere with Sargon, the biggest problem there was that we didn't question Sargon. We didn't question him. We took
yeah.
what he said as
Well,
like
and
awful.
and then even when he did the game, remember people did
Yeah.
call him out on that, but a lot of people, including myself, kind of gave him a bit of a pass. Um, remember he was working on a video game supposedly, right? And he crowdfunded money for this, and then it was several years later, and he at the time gave excuses like, oh gosh, there was an art problem, the artist, there was the work fell through, and I'm really working hard to try and get it solved, and then nothing, and he just dropped the project altogether. People should have called him out on that stuff more too, not just the politics.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not turning on my webcam because I'm naked. It's so hot. That's why the AC is tonight. Heat wave. So next time we should probably do that. If we stream again, I should probably let you know what the weather is. We should pick a day on which it rains.
Well, that could be your thing. You always stream naked when you become
No,
a streamer.
I'm not.
All
All
right.
right.
Well, hey, Kraut,
I'm gonna open that one.
I really appreciate you coming on and staying up late for this. I do appreciate it, and thanks for coming on.
Well,
We're
we'll talk
going to go
again.
ahead and raid somebody. We'll raid Dylan Burns. Okay, he's talking about the coup in Bolivia or the alleged coup in Bolivia. I haven't looked into it.